Friends, I welcome you to my channel. Before listening to this story, I will ask you to like and subscribe. It is not difficult for you, but it is pleasant for me. And we're starting. Luke Abrams parked at his workplace and waited for the song to end before turning off the engine and opening the door. He looked at the neon sign above the entrance to the building and felt proud when he saw the inscription Abrams Production above the door. The guard at the door greeted him as Luke headed for his corner office on the top floor. His CFO told him that the company's value was now $20 million, and not a month had passed without some firm or venture capitalists wanting to discuss buying the business. Luke wasn't interested in this, as he loved his job, his business, his team of people, and he saw no reason at this young age to cash out. Life was good. All these years his family life has been wonderful. He and Becky, his wife of 14 years, struggled at first when he started his business, but now they lived very comfortably. Becky worked part-time as a marketing consultant and often worked from home. She was tall, 173 centimeters tall, with fiery red hair and an incredible body. Their bed life was really good, although Luke noticed a definite reduction in the last 6 months from 4 times a week to just 1 time a week. Becky also seemed to be more attached to her phone, sending messages to God knows who, and one day when he picked it up to check the results of matches, he noticed that it was now password protected, which was not the case in the past. He talked to her about love and how she had become more reserved and quiet in their communication, but she said that she felt older and tired more, and he should just know that she loved him more than he could ever imagine. They talked about children. She didn't want to yet, but he told her how important it was to him, and she agreed that within 6 months she would give up birth control. She wasn't as excited about it as he was, but he thought she was excited about the idea. While Luke was sitting in his office thinking about this, his friend and vice president of sales, Chad Warwick, came into his office looking shy. Chad was friends with him in college, and in high school they played football and hockey together. He wasn't his best friend, but Luke considered him close. Now the relationship was a mixture of friendship, but Luke was also the boss, and although he treated his employees like partners, Luke ultimately decided what they should do. Chad looked in the door and said, "Boss, I feel like shit today. I think I have the flu or something, so if you don't mind, I'll go home to sleep and come back either later or tomorrow. I have finished with a proposal for new climate control systems. See you tomorrow." "Okay, Chad. Hold on and hope you get better." Luke decided to work more on the new business line he was going to create and opened his workstation to pull out the files. He noticed that he had an old version and remembered that he had been working on it over the weekend and saved the files on his home computer instead of uploading it to the company's server. He decided that he would ask Becky to email the file instead of going home. He tried to call the home line, but the phone switched to voicemail. He tried to call Becky's phone, but it was turned off, which seemed strange to him, considering that she had a working day. Well, never mind, he'll get home in 20 minutes. Luke was enjoying the weather and good MP3 tunes when he turned into his block and drove up to the house. He noticed a car in the driveway that seemed familiar to him, and it didn't take him long to realize that it was his friend Chad's Lexus. Luke parked on the street, walked down the driveway, and quietly opened the front door. The ground floor was quiet. No lights or radio were on. Becky wasn't in the office at her desk. He went into the kitchen and then heard moans and voices coming from the master bedroom. With his mind and heart, he couldn't believe what he already knew in his gut. Someone is using his wife in his bed. He grabbed a long Wusthof knife from the shelf and walked slowly up the stairs. He was standing in the hallway, blocked by the door jamb so they couldn't see him, but he could hear what they were talking about. They were hugging and talking, and he heard Becky say, "Chad, we can do this a few more times. I think Luke is starting to suspect my aloofness and my constant phone messages. And I don't make love to him more than once a week because I feel so guilty, and it's so wrong to make love to you and then to him the next day. I really like our little affair over the last 4 months." Luke remembered that Becky had told him she was going to a marketing conference in Denver in 2 weeks, and quickly realized that it coincided with a sales conference that Chad would attend in Denver that same weekend. Luke was crushed by what he heard. He pulled out his phone and turned on the video, slowly peeking out from behind the door jamb. His wife Becky was now riding his friend and employee Chad. At that moment, Luke burst into the room, filming with a phone in one hand and a knife in the other. He grabbed Becky by the hair, tore her away from Chad, turned her around and pushed her onto the bed. She screamed and saw that it was Luke. Her eyes widened, Her mouth opened and she screamed, "Luke, it doesn't mean anything." At that moment, she tried to get up and go to the hatch, and Chad tried to move to the edge of the bed and stand up, but Luke held out a knife and shouted, "Both of you sit on the bed and shut the hell up or you'll find a 12-inch blade in your chest." Quickly. They both sat down and pulled up the sheet. Becky began to sob uncontrollably, and Chad began to tell Luke, "Boss, it's really nothing, just a distraction for us. It doesn't mean anything." "Luke, I love you. It was just a meaningless lovemaking with Chad. It doesn't change anything about how I feel about you. It was just the last time I sowed some wild oats before you and I settled down with the kids. Please, Luke. It's nothing. Send the children away, come and hug me, and I'll fix everything." Luke looked at her as if she had lost her mind. "Becky, does this mean anything?" "Well, I think you've proved that our marriage means nothing to you. You've demonstrated that you don't respect me, and that I was a fool to believe that you loved me. How can you say you love me when you've been using Chad in my own bed for months? You want me to cuddle with you. Damn it, I can barely look at you and I'll never touch you again, that's for sure. Damn it. Now just sit there and shut up, you pathetic sack of shit." Becky recoiled at the sight of his anger and pain. He had never spoken to her like that. He practically idolized her and treated her with love and respect, and his answer cut right into her soul. With that, Luke made a quick call, looked at Chad, and said, "Janie, this is Luke. I'm sending you a video of Chad using my wife Becky in my bed. I do not know if you knew that he was bullying you and the children, and I'm just really sorry that I have to tell you this." Luke was silent for a few minutes before hanging up, and then said to Chad, "She says not to worry about coming home. Obviously, this isn't the first time you've betrayed your life and your children. Now add that you betrayed your friend and your boss and ruined 2 marriages. What a worthless bag of shit you are. I'll give you one chance to save your job. Tell me exactly when it started and how many times it happened." Becky looked at Luke and said, "Don't make us get over it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything, and it stops right now. You are welcome." Luke's look of hatred and pain made her shrink back even more, shrink into the headboard and look away. She continued to cry and sob while Chad answered Luke. "Luke, please don't leave our friendship because of this, and don't let it affect the good work I do for the company. Becky means nothing to me, and I mean nothing to her. We were only seduced by the lust of an illicit affair. This is the 4th time we've met. The first time we were both in Denver for different conferences, and I knew she would be there. I called her the first night to go to dinner. Well, we ate, drank a lot, and danced, and we really felt a spark for each other. So that night and the next we went up to my room and made love. Then about a month later, Becky called me and said that you were leaving town for the whole day to visit a new construction site and asked me to come over. 3 weeks later, we rented a room at the Hilton Hotel, met for lunch at noon and made love there. We were going to meet at the next conference in Denver next month for the last time and spend 3 nights trying to complete this. We both felt guilty and shitty for doing this to you and my family. Becky knows that you want to have children, and she will give up the pills. So we decided that's it, and we're going to be good spouses again." "I'm so sorry, Luke. Looking back, I knew it was so wrong, and now I've ruined my marriage, and maybe your marriage and my career if you can't forgive us." Becky looked at Luke and said, "Yes, Luke. I was so caught up in this mystery. There was nothing wrong with you, Luke. I love you. I've never loved anyone but you, and I want your children and grow old with you. You treated me like a queen. Please don't leave me in our marriage because of a mistake. It didn't mean anything." "Doesn't that mean anything? Do you even know me? How can you think that allowing another man to be intimate with you means nothing to our marriage? Do you think I'll ever be able to get over the pain of being cheated on? Get past the lies and trust you again someday? How could you think that I would ever want to touch your changing body again? How do you think I can have the same spark, the same connection, and the same love that I had for you after you insulted me so much? How can you not see the strain this has already put on our marriage? Lack of conversation and communication. One drunken night may be a mistake, but planning and holding meetings at conventions outside the city and at home is a matter, not a mistake. What the hell is wrong with you?" For the first time, Becky began to understand what she had done. She convinced herself that this was a pointless affair, and he wouldn't hurt her relationship, maybe even make it stronger. But when Luke spoke, she realized that she had emotionally and physically distanced herself from him. She didn't understand why, because she loved and wanted only him. Maybe it was the guilt she was trying to bury that was eating away at her and their relationship. She thought her affair would never be revealed. Luke trusted her so much. She saw that this trust would never be the same again. She thought that Luke loved her so much, he would forgive her, and she would quickly make him forget, being a loving and caring wife and having children. Now she realized how she had deceived herself. She fooled herself into thinking she deserved it, and it would make her a better wife. Now she saw how much pain and disrespect she had poured out on the man she loved so much and wanted to have children with him and a long and happy life. Oh my God, she thought. Have I ruined everything? How do I get through this? All she could do was look at Luke and say, "Please, Luke, please forgive me for hurting you. I didn't think much about what I was doing. I didn't know it would be so devastating. I never meant to disrespect you. I never wanted to hurt you like this." Luke picked up his phone and played the part of the video where she screamed with pleasure. Luke looked at Chad and said, "There's no way to save your job. Don't bother coming tomorrow, you're fired. Now get the hell out of my house." Chad started to get up, and so did Becky, but Luke yelled at her, "Stay there and don't move." She shrank back into bed as she saw the hurt on Luke's face turn to anger and pure hatred. My God, what have I done to offend such a good man and turn his love for me into hatred? Chad grabbed his clothes, flew down the stairs, jumped out the door, and sped off in his car. Luke looked at Becky and started crying. She got out of bed and tried to go to him and hug him, but he looked at her with disgust, turned away, and raised the knife so that she would not approach him. She burst into tears and ran into the bathroom, locked the door, turned on the shower, and sank to the floor. She hoped that maybe if she gave Luke space, he would calm down and they could talk. It was her only hope. She cried and washed for half an hour. After washing, drying herself with a towel and putting on a bathrobe, she quietly opened the bathroom door, fearing another furious scream from Luke and knowing that she deserved it. But the room was quiet. She looked out into the hallway and the house seemed quiet to her. "Luke, I'll prepare a spare bedroom for you and stay away from you as long as you want, until you calm down enough to let me talk to you, explain my actions, and apologize." She didn't hear an answer. She saw that the drawers of the dresser were open and empty, and most of the clothes in his closet were gone. 2 large suitcases disappeared from the closet. Then she turned around and saw a 30-centimeter butcher knife embedded up to the hilt in the pillow and mattress. She realized that Luke was gone, and she could only hope that he would stay safe, not hurt himself, and answer her calls when he calmed down in a day or two. She entered the spare bedroom, threw herself on the bed, curled up in the fetal position, and cried herself to sleep. Luke went to his office and spent a very restless night on the couch in the adjacent conference room. He notified HR and the security service about the termination of Chad's work. Later that morning, Chad did show up at the scene, assuming that Luke had cooled down, but security took his badge, escorted him to his car, and said that if he showed up again, the police would be called. Luke spent a couple of hours alone at his desk, wondering where to go next. He clearly understood that despite the depth of his love for Becky, their marriage was over. He would never be able to feel the same spark of joy, trust, and a deep union of his heart and soul with her, and that meant the marriage was a fiasco. Pride, resentment, anger, jealousy, it doesn't matter what you call it. She was no longer his life partner. There could be no question of having children. It was all over. Luke called his CFO and they spent 4 hours discussing in great detail the value of the company and what Luke decided to do. His right-hand man, a financier, was stunned to hear about Chad and Becky. He begged him not to do anything rash, to let his anger and pain subside for a few weeks, and then decide what he wanted to do. But Luke had already made up his mind. Becky woke up in the morning, and the pain and resentment she saw on Luke's face quickly hit her when she fully recovered. My God, how could I be so stupid? Some kind of affair with someone I barely like, much less have no love for, may have ruined my marriage with the only man I really love. What the hell is wrong with me? She was determined to fix it, to get Luke back, to get them both back to the way they were before she was stupid enough to have an affair. She was sure that Luke loved her so much that he would never leave her. She couldn't resist calling him on his cell phone. He immediately went to voicemail, so she left him a message. Luke, I'm really sorry. I love you so much and I know I hurt you and I'm so ashamed. But Luke, you love me, and I love you, and we can get through this. I'll do whatever you want to make it go away. I promise that I will be the best wife and mother you can hope for. Please come to me or call me. I need you. Please talk to me, Luke. There was no response from Luke that day or the next. On the third day, she called his office administrator, Brenda. Brenda was very close to Luke, actually idolized him, and Luke told her about what happened between Chad and Becky. Brenda answered Becky's call and told her in no uncertain terms that Luke was busy, instructed her not to let him call in person, and that he would be happy to be left alone until he was ready. Becky assumed she meant willingness to talk, but Brenda didn't actually say that. Well, at this point, Becky assumed that Luke needed time. Becky called Chad and now knew that Luke had actually fired him from his job. She also heard that Chad's wife kicked him out and he returned to his parents. He hinted that he would like to come and talk to Becky about Luke forgiving them, but she told him to fuck off and that she never wanted to talk to him again. She blamed most of the blame on him, even though she subconsciously realized that she was deceiving herself and felt just as guilty, if not more so than Chad. She couldn't understand why she had actually done this and how stupid it was to risk everything she had with Luke. Becky gave Luke a week, and then she couldn't stand it. She called his cell phone, but the number was no longer in service. She called his office and was told that Luke would not be available and she had to stop calling. It was too much for her. She had to do anything. She wanted to keep her affair a secret, hoping and assuming that Luke wouldn't want family and friends to find out that she cheated on him. But now she started calling all his friends and asking if they knew where he was staying and what he was thinking. They all replied that they had nothing to say to her, and that Luke had told them it was their own business. The way they treated her with disdain made her realize that Luke had probably told them about the affair, and that added to her shame and sadness. Becky eventually called Luke's parents to see if he was staying with them, but when they answered the phone, she introduced herself and said hello. They hung up. She called again, and they switched to voicemail. She went to Luke's company and persuaded the guards to let her into the lobby. They called Brenda, who came up to Becky and asked her directly what she needed. Becky was close to tears and said, "I want my husband to come downstairs and talk to me. He should respect his wife enough to talk to me and let me explain." Should he respect his wife as much as she respected him in their marriage? Maybe you need to think more about what you've done. Anyway, Luke doesn't work here anymore. He sold the company and left the area and made it very clear that he was not giving you any information about his current condition, well-being, or location. Now please leave, or I'll have security escort you out of the room. Becky rushed home in complete confusion. Sold the company? He would never do that. Left the area? Why doesn't he talk to her? She sat down on her email and tried to write him a long letter of apology, but when she sent it to both his personal and work email addresses, it returned. The addresses are invalid. She called his parents again, but they blocked her number. She returned to the spare bedroom and collapsed on the bed. For the next 4 weeks, Becky lived like a zombie. She hadn't heard anything about Luke, not a word about where he was or how he was coping with their marriage. In desperation, she hired a private detective firm, and eventually she was sent a report with limited information. They told her that Luke had sold his company, and although the exact price was not made public, she is estimated to have gone for more than $20 million. They told her that he had closed all of Becky's accounts and joint accounts and credit cards, canceled his phone, internet, and email, sold all his valuables, and apparently left town. They told her that Luke had paid the mortgage on the house and drawn up a bill of sale in her name. They were unable to get any of his friends, work colleagues, or relatives to tell them anything about his whereabouts or how to contact him. 8 weeks after Luke left, a man came to the front door and handed Becky an envelope. She saw that Luke's name was written on the label with the address, and she opened the envelope, hoping to get at least some information. The first thing that fell out when she opened the envelope was his wedding ring, then some documents, and then a photo that was cut into strips. After piecing together the photo, she saw that it was their wedding portrait, which had been passed through a shredder. She couldn't stand it and cried for several minutes until she could open the rest of the contents of the envelope. There were legal documents and a letter. There was a flash drive in the envelope. She grabbed the letter and began to read it. "Becky, I know that you wanted to see me, talk to me, and were sure that we could end your affair. You thought it was just a pointless affair, a mistake, something that I should just forget, and that we would go back to our marriage as it was before you decided to break our wedding vows and my trust. I was amazed that you could fool yourself into thinking that the same thing was possible someday, or at least close to what we had. I know that you have never loved me, at least not the way I loved you, because you were able to deceive me. You didn't seem to understand the pain you caused. No one had ever hurt me like this, and the fact that it came from the woman I loved more than my life was too much to ever forgive. I will never be able to trust you again. I will never be able to touch you and make love to you. Maybe you don't remember what happened, or it wasn't important to you. If so, I've attached a video of you and Chad ruining our marriage. Your words alone are enough to break my heart every time I think about them. From the calls I initially received from our very close friends and relatives about how I could leave you and why I was so cruel to disappear from your life, it became clear to me that you never took responsibility for your actions. I am very sorry to say that the same video, with another letter, was sent to these people so that they would understand the depth of betrayal and that nothing can be done about it. I was so devastated and destroyed by you that I decided to take revenge. I'm not happy with my actions, but I think they were the only road open to me. I've decided that from this day on, you'll never hear from me again. You'll never see me again. And I will never return to our home, to our city, maybe even to our state. I guess I'll never understand why you did it. What brought you to this? I hope that you will understand this before you have another serious relationship, and I hope that you will remember my pain before you start cheating on someone again. I hope that someday in the near future I will be able to overcome the pain, humiliation, and disrespect that I went through, and I will be able to remember the old times in our relationship, which were filled with love. I hope that someday, instead of the hatred I feel for you, I will be able to feel at least indifference, or I will be able to find forgiveness or understanding. Anyway, you'll never know. You may not care about it, but I'll never know about it, and I'll live with it. Goodbye. The last package of documents in the envelope was headed divorce, but at that moment Becky couldn't see anything through her tears and collapsed on the floor. It has been 5 years since Luke disappeared, and, as stated in the letter, Becky has not heard a word from anyone about his health, his spirit, his whereabouts, or his life. Luke was very generous in the decision to divorce, offering her $1 million, a house and property in lieu of any ongoing financial support. Her lawyer told her that this was the best offer she could get, since the $22 million that Luke sold the company for was not held in the United States and would never be available for any kind of judicial compensation. Becky really didn't care, in her opinion. She didn't deserve anything and would never fight what Luke thought was fair. At first, her life was very difficult as friends and family saw a devastating video of her making love to Chad in her marital bed. She understood how badly she had hurt Luke and how she had made him hurt her by sending the video. She also understood that it was a way to prevent anyone from asking about what happened and whether they could be together again. She felt extremely humiliated, embarrassed, and hurt that her friends and family had seen this. But she realized that it wasn't as bad as what she had done to Luke. She lived with her shame and, at the insistence of her parents, decided to go to a therapist to work on her grief and depression and try to change her life. She had a few dates, but she never seemed to have fun and didn't let anyone into her personal thoughts and pain. So nothing ever progressed beyond a few painfully awkward meetings. There were several nights where she tried to find solace in bed with other men. They were so awkward, so humiliating, and served as such a grim reminder of what once was, and how she had sunk to this, that she could no longer bear the thought of a meaningless affair. When Luke left, he took the photo albums, and she had no photos of them together, and every year the memories of his appearance, voice, his spirit, and personality, his loving touches gradually disappeared from her life.